Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about realism. It's about to get real. Some of you may be wondering, what is realism? Realism is a literary movement that developed towards the end of the Civil War. It got away from the Romantic times where highly imaginative fiction existed from the early 1800s. Some of the movements that steered away from Romanticism was realism, regionalism, and naturalism. We will mainly talk about realism and briefly look at regionalism later on in the slides. How did it prevail? Realism prevailed because of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution's economic, social, and political changes that took place in post-war life allowed American realism to succeed. Now we're going to talk about the characteristics of realism. Realism has the word real in it because it actually talks about real life. In realism text, the character is more important than the action and plot. The character appears in their most complexity of temperament and motive. It's just like they are in their own zone. Most realism pieces serve the interests and aspirations of the insurgent middle class. They talk their natural ways, no sugarcoating. In this slide, it compares Romanticism and realism. Romanticism, it aspired to the ideal, and it was thought to be more polite, and it was vulgar of details of life. In realism, it was thought to be more democratic. The critics stressed the potential for vulgarity and its emphasis on the commonplace, and it was a potential poison for the pure mind.
Hi guys, it's Melissa here. Regionalism is all about local flavor or local color. This means that they have a reliance on minor details and dialects. Their writing was usually written on the South or the West. Most often these stories were full of humor and small-town characters. Our Town would be a perfect example of something a regionalist would write on. Mark Twain, the coolest of the coolest. There are many great writers of the realism period, but one of the greatest was our very own Mark Twain. He was an American writer in the realism period. He wrote many books that are based off his experiences in his childhood. Hooked from his book, Huckleberry Finn was a character based on Mark Twain. His early life. This slide just talks about his early life. He was born on November 30, 1835. He was the sixth child of 7. He grew up near the Mississippi River, and his uncle and father both owned slaves. The fact about his father and uncle owning slaves is something you need to know. The rest just basically talks about his careers along the time. He started working early because his father died in 1847, forcing him to quit school and start working. He went from apprentice in 1847 to reporter in 1850. He went on traveling and lecturing for a while, then returned home to become a riverboat pilot. But he stopped when the Civil War blocked the Mississippi River. He became a Confederate irregular in the Civil War for a little while. He then traveled out west to look for prospecting work. We all know that Mark grew up in a time when slavery was thriving. As stated before, his own family owned some. In his 2 books, Huckleberry Finn and Sawyer, the book's characters are mainly modeled by him as a kid. In that time, Mark saw no wrong in slavery. Twain wrote that when he was a child, he had no aversion to slavery and was not aware that there was anything wrong about it, which is just like his character Huck, an abolitionist who considered low down as Huck would call it. And young Sam would never have wanted to be insulted by that time.
Slavery. Mark thought that slavery was a way of life. He didn't find anything wrong in it, but by the end of Huckleberry Finn, not only did Sam believe slavery was wrong, but he felt like Caucasians owned some type of back pay to African Americans. In this book, Huck says, "Well, I just go to hell." Huck is basically saying that he would rather go to hell than give Jim up to slave catchers because Jim is no longer just a slave to Huck. He is now his friend. This showed how much he had changed towards slavery. He started to help African Americans like Warner McGuinn, a black law student at Yale, by paying off his college debts. In case you didn't know, this is just some things about his personal life. He married in 1870. He had 4 children with his wife, Olivia Langdon. He lost all his children to sickness and lost his wife before he died in 1910. He went bankrupt while traveling due to bad investments, but he gained it back whenever he got back to America. It is said that due to tragic events that he encountered while traveling, when he returned to America, his writings became dark as he questioned the greed and cruelty of the human race. Who is Ambrose Bierce? The last author we'll talk about is Ambrose Bierce. Ambrose is a journalist, essayist, fiction writer that was known for his biting wit and mysterious death. He was the 10th of 13 children. He was born in Ohio, but he was raised in Indiana. He worked as a printer's apprentice on an anti-slavery newspaper. He was a Union soldier in the Civil War, and he made it all the way to the rank of lieutenant. He had a bullet in his skull behind his ear. His stories after the war were about war in California. In case you didn't know, in the 1870s through the 80s, he was a journalist and a writer in San Francisco, later with the Hearst Publications. He was a magazine writer in London. He married wealthy miner's daughters in 1871, divorced in 1905. The Devil's Dictionary is his often quoted book of cynical definitions, happiness, and agreeable sensation arising from contemplating of the misery of another. September 10th, 1913, age 71, I'm going away to South America and have not the faintest notion when I shall return. He posted a letter from Mexico, then vanished, possibly killed in Mexican Civil War. Bye, guys, because we're cool.
See you later. Bye.